Good day and welcome to Code Escuela. In this session, we will be talking about data types and variables. C# supports many different data types. What is a data type? A data type is a kind of value. It could be a number or a string. C# has several data types. We will discuss only the common built-in types. So we have 5 common data types in C#. First up, we have int. Int meaning whole numbers or numbers that has no fractional parts. Now, with int or integers, uh, there are several variations to it. So if you are curious as to what uh, those kinds of variations for an integer is, you can follow this or take a look at this link. And then here, you can see that we have the different uh, variations of a integer type. Okay, so this could vary from depending on what range you are looking for. So it depends on uh, the code that you will be doing. So you could settle for this type, which is a shorter range of whole numbers up to very long numbers. Okay, so you have a short and then u short means unsigned shorts or whole numbers only with no negative numbers or negative integer numbers up to this very long integers. Okay, next, the next type of number value or data type is float or floating point numbers, or which means that these are all the numbers including the whole numbers and those numbers that have decimal parts or fractional parts. Okay, it means like numbers like 1.1, 1.2, something like that. Okay, in float there are also several variations of float. If you are curious as to what those kinds of variations are, you can look up this link, and here it will give you an idea of the different variation of a floating point number. Okay, so you have several capacities or sizes of the numbers, starting from float. You have here 4 bytes, and then much larger range with double, and then the largest one is decimal. So you have up to 28 to 29 digits of numbers. Okay, next up is we have this char, or the short for character, or char means single character. Okay, so we will be looking at an example of that later on. Next up we have string. So string is a sequence of characters, or like uh, it's like a char but with multiple sequences of it. Okay, so we will also be looking at an example of it also. And then also we have this bool, or short for boolean. If you are familiar with a boolean, it is a value of either true or false. Okay, it has only two states, a true or a false, or a 0 or 1. Okay, but within C sharp its representation is a true or a false. Okay, so those are the common data types. So how does the data types relate to the next topic of variables? Okay, one way you can make a use of data types is using it in variables. So what is a variable? So a variable is a place for storing values. Okay, you can use values or variables for storing the result of a calculation, or temporarily store some values for processing later. Okay, for you to be able to use variables, you must need to declare it first. Okay, how do we do that? So let's take a look at a code example to illustrate the relationship between data types and variables. Okay, so now we have here inside our uh, main method. Okay, so we have here several lines of code, and so for you to start using variables, you will have to declare them first, meaning you have to indicate that you will be using a variable. Now to do that, you have to follow a specific syntax for declaring a variable. So it would be this format, which means that you have data type, space, and a variable name. Okay, so the data type must be one of those uh, common data types that we have just discussed here. Okay, so either int, float, char, string, or bool. And then space, uh, a space, and then variable name. Now the variable name, it's up to you what variable name you will use. Okay, okay, let's focus now here on line 26. So in line 26, we have a declaration of a variable of an integer type. So we have int, the data type, and then we have space, and then the variable name. In this case, is score. Now uh, you can just uh, uh, end this statement as with a semicolon, and that would be fine. That's the simplest form of a declaration of a variable. In this instance, I have also initialized it, or which means I have set it into a some default value. Okay. Now, in this case, we have set it to 1. Okay. So this is for declaring an integer. On the next line, in here in line 27, we have also declared float, the variable of type float. In this case, the variable name is temperature. As an example, if you're dealing with temperatures, then I've set it as 1.5. Now, for this to be a valid initialization, you have to flag this as a float type. Now, there are several flags you can use depending on the variation of the floating point that data type that you'll be using. There's also different for the long and then the other uh, variations of the floating type data type. Okay. Then we have next in line 28 we have char or char, whatever you may pronounce it. Middle initial is equal to a. Now for you to use char data type, you have to enclose the characters within single quotes. If you notice, we have our a here, a character, and then it is enclosed within or wrapped within single quotes. Okay, that is how you work with char data type or char data type. Next up, we have string. So we have here declared a string of the name variable name, and then we have initialized it into its value as John Doe. Okay. Now you notice that also for you to make use or work with strings, you have to enclose your strings in double quotes. Okay, double quotes. Start double quote and then end double quotes. Okay, and then lastly we have bool or boolean. So a boolean can only have two values or states. It's either true or false. Now with bool, if you did not initialize it into some specific value, you just end it like that, then it would be by default set as false. Okay, but in this case, I have initialized it as true. Okay, now there are several ways that you can use these variables. Now here in our next line, line 32, we have performed a increment, which means add a 1 to our variable score. So this is a shorthand for incrementing value to a variable or an integer variable. Okay, so by default this is incrementing or adding 1 to the score variable. Next up we have here a temperature. We assign the variable temperature into some calculation. Okay, so here we did some division. So this is the symbol for division, and then yeah, we did uh, temperature divided by 2. So the result of this one would be stored to the same variable. So uh, now we have performed some calculations in our code. Okay, and then here middle initial in line 24, we are working with the char data type, and then we have assigned it with a different value. Instead of the letter a in the first in our initialization and declaration part, we assign it with a different value of b. Okay, so you have to remember that with char you can only deal with one single character. Okay, and now we have also this line which is we have assigned a different value to our name variable, which is of type string. Okay, so remember, if you are dealing with strings, you have to enclose it within double quotes. Okay, you start and end with double quotes. Okay, that's a thing to remember with strings. All right, and then lastly, we have here an example of uh, the way we have utilized the boolean variable is it red. Okay, so with the boolean, you can use it in conditions, or if you're dealing with some specific type of logic that would deal with uh, branching out to a specific section of your code, then you can use uh, a boolean type. Okay, so for in this case, we have used the if statement. So if accepts a true value. Okay, so in this case, if is it red is true, then it would execute this line. Okay, so booleans are great for dealing with some specific types of logic wherein you're dealing with branching out different from a set of different conditions. Okay, provided that it results into a boolean value. Okay, either true or false. Okay, so that is how you deal with Boolean data types. You can also directly, I mean, you can also change values, just like what you did with the other data types. You can also assign values uh, after you have initialized your variables. Okay, so now this is the this is now the end of our video or session for discussing the data types and variables. And so I hope in our next session, uh, will join us, and we'll be talking about more on the different aspects of C Sharp. Thank you and have a great day.